What's up guys, welcome back to the channel. Finally gonna do this video. A lot of you have requested this video to see the JAMBMASTER in action. So this is it. This crazy apparatus is what I have been using to hang or set all of my interior doors for over 5 years now. And whenever I first saw this thing, I was not a believer. I thought it looked like the dumbest thing I had ever seen, but it's probably the most addicting tool that I've ever used. And I think you'll probably see why by the time I'm done with the video. In order to understand why the JAMBMASTER has such an advantage as a door hanging tool, you have to understand one of the most critical aspects of setting interior doors. We want our shims to be perfectly perpendicular to the opening. Now that creates a huge problem in the day and age in which we live because lumber is not perfect. A lot of times we go to install doors and we find that the cripple studs are twisted. So we're left trying to make up that difference using tapered shims. The problem is you can only get so precise with these tapered shims, and then you're gonna have gaps and your jamb is not going to be perfectly perpendicular to the plane of your opening. So the beautiful thing about the JAMBMASTER is it is going to allow us to get all of our shims in a perfectly perpendicular plane to the door opening, and that is going to allow the door to swing really well. It's gonna swing perfectly, no pinching or binding or anything like that. So next time that you're going to be setting some interior doors, I challenge you, take a level across the opening and go around just with a speed square and take a look and see if your cripple studs are in alignment, perpendicular to the plane of the opening. You will be shocked and surprised to find that they're nowhere close. So it's pretty tough to make up that difference if all we have to work with is tapered shims. Now this is gonna be more of a 10,000 foot overview video of how to use this tool. I'm not gonna go into all of the very minor nuances of it. We'll maybe cover that in future videos. But as you can see, there are these templates going all the way up and down the side. You can add or subtract as many templates as you want, and these templates will give you your shim locations. They're adjustable, so the first thing you want to do on a job is adjust them to match the doors that you will be installing. In this case, I'm installing 8-foot tall doors, so I had to adjust them because I had been installing 6'8" doors previously. This is a tool that comes with the JAMBMASTER. It's got a couple little wrenches on it, but to adjust the templates, we've just got 2 screws here. We're gonna loosen those, and then you can slide your template up or down, take it off, put it wherever you want to match the shim location that you want, and then just tighten them up when you've got it where you want it. I want to try to explain this without it being too boring, but we get our templates adjusted so that they're in the locations where we want our shims to be. The next thing we need to do before we start the job is go around to a few different doors and measure the head jamb all the way across. That is the shim opening that we want. That way we can just pop our door right into the opening, and the shims are gonna be the perfect width apart. So the first thing you wanna do is go around and measure your head jambs and see what they are. Now I know I'm falling on about a 9/16 strong increment. So I've got this set at 5/8. This will make sense as we keep progressing here, but if I hook onto these templates and I measure to this outside edge, that's where I'm gonna route my blocks to. So that is my measurement. If I need to micro adjust that in or out, I do that up here and then down on the bottom. That way I can move my template in 2-inch increments with the stops up here, and then it only takes a couple seconds to adjust between a 2.4 door and a 2.8 door or a 3.0 door, so on and so forth. It's just a matter of moving the stop, and then you will loosen the knob and slide it around. This is the micro adjustment screw right here. So let's say today I'm installing doors and the head jambs are all measuring at a 5/8. and tomorrow it's a 3/8. Well, if it's a different door manufacturer, I can come up here and then I can use my little wrench and screw this set screw in to adjust my width. But I hope that makes sense. I know it's a little confusing if you've never used this before. Just to demonstrate for you what the adjustment looks like, here I've got a 2/8 opening, here I've got a 2/4 opening. So I had this set up for the 2/8 opening, but I want to adjust it for the 2/4 opening. I'm just gonna pop my little adjustment pins, and it's got written here on the bar 2/0, 2/4, 2/6, 2/8, 3/0. I'm just gonna move that over to 2/4. And it's very easy. Slide this together, crank the knobs, and now you've adjusted from a 2/8 opening to a 4/0 or a 4/0. Holy cow. From a 2/8 you have adjusted from a 2/8 opening to a 2/4 opening, and it only takes a couple seconds. One note with this tool, I do prefer to be about 1/32 wider than my actual jam width. It gives you a little bit of margin for error. You can always shim in and push the jam a little bit over, but if your shimmed opening is too tight, you're pretty much screwed. All right, let's pop this bad boy in place and I'll show you how this works. Okay, so we're in the opening now. One of the things I love about the tool is that it instantly gives you feedback about the opening that you're going to be installing the door into. The reason it does this is because this outside edge of the template matches exactly what the finished jam width is. So that endpoint right there on the template matches the outside width of my jam. So if I stick this thing in here and I realize that there's not much wiggle room, that's good information to have, and it's one of the advantages that I like with this tool versus traditional shimming. So immediately I put the JAMBMASTER in the opening and then I start diagnosing the situation. So some of the first questions I'm asking myself is, do I want to install this door plumb, or do I want to match a sidewall to keep the margin between my casing and the sidewall consistent? I can immediately see, do I have a cripple stud that is towed in and I don't have much space at the bottom or at the top? And that information helps me to decide whether I want to fudge the templates over this way or that way. Ideally, I try and center the thing in the opening, but as you know, with all of these framed openings not being perfect, you're constantly having to adjust and fudge things to make it work as best as possible. So here I immediately put this in the opening and I can see I don't have a lot of space. Now there is a level over here on the JAMBMASTER. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to look at the level and see what it's telling me about plumb. I'm not sitting plumb right now. My bottom needs to go over. So the first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to bump this over and try and get this unit plumb in the opening. So right there it's setting plumb, and I want my templates to be off of the framing enough that I can get a block in there and route it. Now this opening is really tight, but again, the beautiful thing about this tool is I can see the exact picture of how that jam is gonna go in this opening, and with other methods, I can't do that. So that's one of the things I love about this. So I've got very little space up here. I've got it centered. I'm only gonna have about a 1/16 to an 1/8 of an inch of shim on both sides up here. Now I gotta try and get it plumb and matching this sidewall. So I'm fairly close to plumb there. Now I'm gonna take out my tape measure and just see what this is telling me about how it's gonna look up against this sidewall. I've got 5 inches bottom and top, so this wall's plumb. I know I can install the template here plumb and go to work. You will notice these set screws on the side here. So the first thing I did was I kind of got the top centered in place up here, but you'll just tighten those and that locks it in place so it's not going to move. And then we're going to get the bottom where it needs to be. And then you do the same thing with the set screws on the bottom, and that screw gets it nice and tight against the cripple stud down here. And then there are also 2 stabilizers in the center. You're just gonna lightly turn those until it just touches, and that's gonna make so you can't push this template over whenever you're routing. Same thing on this side. And then there's a shot of the bubble level on here, if I didn't show that before. I want you to note with this, look at how tight these templates are to the framing. So we had some major issues here. First off, the head jamb width was a little bit narrower than it should have been, but then we've got our cripple studs actually bowing in. So this opening would have been very difficult to try and deal with traditional shimming because there's just no space at all in the center here for these shims. And then as you see, as we go down to the bottom, it opens up closer to what it should be, where I've got a 1/4 inch to 3/8 on both sides. At this point, it's time to put our blocks in. And some of you are probably thinking this is the craziest thing I've ever seen. I know, I thought the same thing whenever I first saw this tool. So I keep a sustainer, I think this is either a 4 or a 5, with different blocks. I got 1/4 inch, 3/8 thick, 1/2 inch thick, and 5/8. And as you can see, I've been setting all the doors in this house, and I'm mostly just using 1/4 inch because there's not much space to work with here. So I start with 1/4 inch, and you're just going to take the shim and see, you want it to be thicker than the inside edge of that template. So as you see here, 1/4 inch was enough. Down here, however, it's falling through, so I'm gonna have to use 3/8 here. So we'll start with the smallest thickness of shims and get those placed on the templates. And then after you've got the 1/4 inch shims placed, you can move up to your 3/8, 1/2 inch, so on and so forth. But after you've got a shim sitting on each template, now it's time to glue them on. I like to just use a SureBonder cordless glue gun with a DeWalt battery adapter on it. Works really well. So then we'll just take our shim, and what I like to do, especially when I know I'm gonna be routing them really thin, is I like to kind of do a good amount of glue on the back to make sure it's adhered the whole way, because whenever you're routing it down to almost nothing, you want to have that a good glue bond. Whenever you're doing your thicker shims, not as big a deal, but whenever they're getting thin, make sure you got a good bond on there. Now all of our shims are glued in place in the center of the template, and it's time to start routing. This is the JAMBMASTER cart setup, and I did a video on this years ago. Search JAMBMASTER cart setup and it'll probably come up on YouTube. So this is the router. This is a dedicated router that I keep set up just for using with the JAMBMASTER. This is a 7/8 inch mortising bit, and this is a 1 1/4 inch guide bushing on here. One of the keys to efficiency with using the JAMBMASTER is not to be setting up your tools specifically for the task each time, so keeping a dedicated router is key. Also, you want to make sure this is all locked in really well. Make sure your bit is really well secured. This guide bushing has thread locker on it, so it's not moving. And then I've got the levers on this all cranked down really hard, because a lot of times I route all of the openings for an entire floor of the house at once. So you don't want to be going along and having your router moving around. So one of the questions might be, well, how deep do you set your mortising bit here? It's very, very simple. It's, I believe, 3/4 of an inch, but all you're doing is setting that mortising bit to a depth equal with the back side of your template here, which, like I said, is about 3/4 of an inch. But what we're doing here is we're routing these blocks to match the overall width between this point and this point. We want to be the same as our head jamb width, or just slightly wider. So it's very simple. You're just going to set your mortising bit depth equal to the back side of this template here. After we're done routing, it's very simple. Just loosen your set screws back to their original starting position so that they're all the way out. Now, there are a couple things I want to show you now that this is shimmed. This would have been a very difficult opening to shim using the traditional methods because number one, both of my cripple studs are bowing inwards, which made it very narrow in the center. Number two, this cripple stud in particular was twisted. So let me show you what this looks like. And I've seen cripple studs twisted much worse, but you see how that shim is routed at a taper? So the tool automatically finds the correct taper. It's so easy to shim because it's always going to be perfectly perpendicular with the opening. So as we go down here, you see that taper on these shims, and it just works so well. You see there, I've tapered down to nothing over here. It's just a pretty tough opening to shim. And then as we go back over here, you can see how there's hardly anything even left on these shims. So this would have been a really tough opening to shim using traditional shimming methods. Okay, so here we are all installed. Looks really good, popped right into place, no issues at all with the shims. So it just makes life so easy. The other thing I want to highlight is how many shim points I have here. So let's count them up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. 17 shim points on this 8-foot door. It's just gonna hold it in place really well. The other thing I do is I screw exterior screws behind the hinges so it's very well locked in to the cripple stud. So the margins are great. I could talk for hours about the nuances of setting doors, but I'm gonna keep the video pretty brief. But overall, this is how the JAMBMASTER works. I mean, it just makes a door swing so well, which is what it should do. But whenever we're fighting cripple studs that are twisted and whatnot, it just makes it a huge challenge. But you'll see how little space that I had in here to work with this particular opening, and the JAMBMASTER just made it simple. So guys, I'll probably do more videos in the future on the JAMBMASTER, but I just wanted to give you a 10,000 foot overview of how it works, kind of show you the process, give you a little taste of why I use it. Anytime I can create a system or a process that is repeatable and predictable, that I can do over and over again, and it's not gonna stress me out, I like going that route with Carpentry, and that's why I've been using this tool for 5 years. I got sick of going to one opening after another with a twisted stud and just trying to deal with that, trying to center the doors between walls and shim them perfectly. I started using the JAMBMASTER, and it just works really well for me. So that's that. So again, I know there's probably a ton of questions. We'll talk more about it in the future and dive in a little bit deeper to some of its other advantages, but this gives you a basic idea of how it works. I hope you have enjoyed the video. Let me know your questions in the comments below, and I will try to make videos that address those questions and concerns.